Hi everyone. Just got a short video for you this week, our last week, because we don't really have a whole lot left to do. The readings for this week is to take us forward from this class into whatever future endeavors that might interest you from this, or to think about it in a larger context going past this class. So this is really just going to be something that we talk about in the discussion to close us out here for the semester. But I wanted to take two angles that I think are particularly useful for everyone who is taking this class, even if it's not your specific interest, in the way that it is mine, right? You didn't write a 370-page document on this particular issue, and you probably are not interested in doing so. But I do think that there are some things going forward that are going to be useful to you as somebody who is majoring in history and planning on going into a history-based field going forward. So the two readings, one is the last chapter from Alexander and Alexander. It's pretty short, but it's a chapter based on the profession of being involved in the museum world and what that entails. So we have our professional side, which is being covered by Alexander and Alexander, and then our theoretical side, which is being covered by the Bennett article. So Alexander and Alexander is basically going to talk about what it means to be a professional in a museum. It talks about the key professional historical or museum-based institutions that you should be aware of, that you may want to join or go to conferences for. It also talks about the training that goes into working in the museum field. So a lot of times, as I'm sure you're aware, history classes don't tend to talk about jobs and where we should go after we get our degrees. And so I did want to give you this resource going forward. Also, the National Council on Public History is another great site to learn more about what it means to be a public historian, the myriad jobs available for historians outside of teaching. So if you are into history, you know that you don't want to teach, or you just want to see what else is out there, I highly, highly recommend checking out the National Council on Public History and opening your eyes to the wide world of the work that historians can do, and not even just in museums. So that's essentially what Alexander and Alexander is going to give you. The other article from Bennett is going to talk more about theory in relation to our main topic in the class, which is tied to science-based museums and the relationship between science and museums and historical analysis. And the main question that Bennett's going to be asking is, can we make science-based museums take history seriously in exhibits, right? Because science-based museums tend to, even today, you probably noticed in examples that you've looked at throughout the semester or in your exhibit visit, that a lot of science centers in particular separate themselves from time and separate themselves from locality, and just talk about the present and where we're going forward in scientific innovation. So it separates science from all of the context that makes science possible, right? So all of these developments are totally divorced from the worlds in which they grew. So there's, of course, as historians, we would argue that there is a lot of valid reasons for including history in science-based institutions. And so Bennett's going to look at a couple examples and determine whether it is something that we can see science museums taking seriously going forward. The other thing to consider when you ask this question about where history will be in evaluating science and presenting science to the public is, should they do it, right? In addition to can they, should they, right? This goes back to mission, right? Institutional missions, the goals that are present within an exhibit. Are they concerned with the historical component, or are they concerned with something else, right? And if they're concerned with something else, it does help explain why the historical component's not there. But of course, we can also make the argument that maybe it's not fully being understood if the historical component is not there. So that's really all that I want to say. This is really just kind of a food for thought sort of thing to close us out and give you kind of a interesting topic to think about for your final discussion post. For the project itself, I am recording. I think I've told you in the past I record these in advance, so I'll have more specific things to tell you by the time we actually get into the end of the class in a couple weeks. But essentially, as you work on this final project, you should have gotten multiple forms of feedback. You've gotten feedback from me throughout the semester. You should have gotten feedback from me on your rough draft. You'll have gotten feedback from another student on your rough draft. So make sure you're following the feedback that you've been given. Also, read the guide on Canvas carefully. Make sure you're including all the components that are necessary to include. And one of the big ones is, right, you need a PowerPoint presentation and a Word document. I need to be able to visualize the things that you are saying you're going to do. So that's why the PowerPoint is there. So make sure you submit both of those things when you turn this in at the end of the class. Make sure you're using your context sources. Make sure you're using museum-based sources from class. You can feel free to add anything that we've talked about since you turned in the rough draft if you feel like that's relevant for you. Pay attention to the announcements. As we go through this last week, I will tell you if I update the guide in the last week to make sure that everybody knows for any questions that need answering as you go through this. And then lastly, congratulate yourself on finishing this semester. It's a short, intensive class. I'm sure this is not the only one most of you were taking, as I knew from your introductory posts. So you are making it through. You have this last thing to do. You've already done your rough draft, and then you can enjoy your winter break. And I have enjoyed having all of you in this class with me.